Man, what's going on, y'all? It's Tequila Beats. Today we're going to be doing more of a Travis Scott, Utopia, Mike Dean kind of vibe. Let's just get into it. So the songs I was inspired by, especially for the sound selection, were Telekinesis and 4x4. And I just really wanted to start off by getting a sound that has kind of that, really airy, brassy, but like kind of distorted reverb sound. Have the new Bank Heartbreak just dropped it. Free version of it as well. But it's this brass sound. So the main thing I'm doing is with these effects, I have this brass sound also with the synth brass, but you can hear the difference with the reverb on it and the distortion on it versus without it. So all I did, you can do this, you don't need Omnisphere for it, but if you have a brass sound, I like getting the reverb and making it in mono. This will make it so that it's not so spacious and airy, but it'll make it sound really old, really vintage, because all they could record in back in the day was in mono. They didn't have stereo. Then I'm also putting on this distortion, which again, it's really just adding some saturation, adding some harmonics, makes it feel a little bit more vintage and just a really cool sound. Then for the melody, if you look at those really classic, Travis Scott tutorials, all of them say to do, this little chord progression. That little minor chord to the major chord right above it. So what I thought to do is just take that but invert it. So instead of going from down to up like that, I'm instead doing the opposite and going from up to down. However, I'm also adding a seventh into both of these chords. So all I'm doing is for this F sharp major, I'm skipping a note in the scale, which is the D sharp. And then I'm bringing it up to this F right here. So before I add this top line melody, this is what the chords are. But I wanted to add this little top line melody. I had a few ideas. So the way I come up with these melodies, I actually sing them. So I just went bum, 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 bum. And I really just kind of, did it out and then I put the notes in. It's something I wish I could explain how to do it, but it really is something that just comes with repetition, where you're able to just kind of, put down the notes whenever you're singing them. So, just try it out next time you're making a beat. Then I'm getting the string sound again, all these sounds from my newest Bank, 100 Omnisphere presets, but also they're all one-shots. So if you don't have Omnisphere 3, you can also get them. I mean, this is one of the worst midis I've ever seen, if we're just being honest. But really, all I'm doing is just following that F, if you remember back from this chord, this F up here. I'm really just doing a little interval between that F, F sharp, and then a D sharp below. Then I have this little weird, like, kind of synth lead sound. All I'm doing is I'm freestyling in the scale, and with a lot of these Mike Dean, Travis Scott type beats, there's always a synth lead, but it's never doing too much. It's really doing simple melodies, so make sure to leave a lot of space between each one of those little melodies. Then I'm adding in the super distorted bass, Utopia, probably my favorite bass sound in the entire Bank, and it sounds like this. And it's important to leave a little space in this because all these other sounds, they're taking up a bunch of room. You don't want the bass going the whole time because then it just won't have any rhythm. It just won't sound good. But this is what the entire intro, sample sounds like. And in this beat, I am doing a Mike Dean outro, so stick around for that. I'm going to show you how to do the leads, how to do the chords for that. And the thing with these Mike Dean outros is that they're actually not super complicated. There are a few little techniques which I'll be showing you all how to do. But next are the drums, and this is what they sound like before I break it down. So the first thing, and I think it's most important, if you listen to any Travis Scott sounds, he always has a really thumpy, really low, kind of, more heavy snare. There's a lot of lows in it. It's not super high. It's not super, airy. Has a lot of to it, And I get all my drum kits from Reddit for free, so that's what I recommend doing. Then with the hi-hats, it's always important to come here to the shift and just bring it up a little. It'll move the hi-hats a little bit off the grid. It will just give a little more swing, a little more rhythm. Just makes it sound way better. And for these Travis Scott beats, it's not like the Southside beats where you're doing a bunch of crazy hi-hat rolls. Really pick your spots. I really like doing it on this first little beat right here, as you can see. I kind of do on every single one of these rolls. I like putting them right there. And in general, I just keep them really simple. Don't do anything too crazy. Then for the 808s, you can kind of do anything, but I am using a sub bass in some parts of this beat. So I wanted to get more of a short 808 so that there's a larger contrast between the really short 808s and the really long sub bass. And I also think having a little bit of a shorter 808 adds a little more bounce because you're just leaving a little bit more space. And also with the kick in 808, you do not want the kick hitting every time the 808 is hit. As you can see here, I'm bringing the 808 MIDI onto the kick. I'm not hitting the kick on every single spot that the 808 is on. One thing I love doing is right before an 808 hit, I love putting a kick before it because it gives this kind of rolling feel to it. Then doing this little thing where, you have the kick right here, but you don't put it on the 808. Just a really cool way to get around with the bounce. It's that classic Metro Boomin kind of thing. And I love doing that with my drums just to get a little bit more of a unique bounce. You know what I mean? Then I'm getting this rim. It's the one from Can't Say, just one of the best rims ever. And I love it. Just something really subtle, just add a little bit of variation. But then, like I said, during the second part of the first verse, I always like taking out the 808 and putting the sub bass back in. It's something you see in a few Travis Scott songs, and it just adds a lot more variation. Just makes it sound really cool. But now it's time to get to the Mike Dean outro. First, I love getting a synth. He loves using stuff that has saw waves. So if you're looking for presets, even if you're not using mine, even though I think you should because they're really good. But look for stuff that has, saw waves and stuff like that because that's what he really sticks to. The way I came up with this, I was listening to Falling Down by X and Lil Peep. Completely unrelated, but the chord progression is basically the exact same, just in a different key. But the real chord progression without any inversions is just come, let's watch the rain as it's falling down. It's that chord progression, but all I'm doing is some inversions. I'm keeping these without any inversions, just an F sharp major to a D sharp minor. But here I'm taking this A sharp minor chord, A sharp, C sharp, F, and I'm taking these bottom two and pitching it up. And the reason I'm doing this is because I think there was just too much of a contrast going this far. You see the C sharp all the way down to this F. I think that's just a little bit too far for these Mike Dean outros. A lot of the chords stay very similar and he uses a lot of inversions. So I pitch it up just to make sure all the chords are a little bit closer to each other in terms of the notes they use. Then at the end, I love adding these, really high synth kind of sounds. And I think it just adds a really cool, kind of brightness to the sample. Then before I get into the lead, getting another sound, Siren, love this sound. I want to do an entire sound design tutorial because I love the way that I do some of these, especially that one. But I'm just doing a simple little counter melody. And it reminds me of some song off Utopia. I forget exactly which one. I'll put it in the video. I like adding these very simple little counter melodies in these Mike Dean outros because I think you need something else to listen to that's not just the pad and not just the lead. Adding this little counter melody adds a little bit of width to it, just adds a little more depth to the overall outro. But now getting into the synth lead. What I do is I always freestyle, but if you're not doing that, what I like doing is I like just bringing up the scale that I'm in and putting notes in it. So it's really hard to teach people, how to do a melody, how to make something catchy. My overall philosophy is to sing it out in your head and try to recreate it. I think people are naturally attracted to people's voices and the melodies that they can come up with those. So kind of mimicking what your voice is doing into a lead or into a synth sound, I think always sounds good. But these Mike Dean leads are all about having contrast. What you want are these really long notes where you're using notes that are in the chord, but you want to contrast them with these really quick, kind of fluttery leads where you're doing a really quick run in the scale. And then for the effects, you always want to have some delay on it. You can see here I'm doing a magnetic delay. But the most important thing is getting a sound that is dynamic. As you notice at the end of the lead solo, I have these really high velocity notes. This is because I made this actual sound where the higher the velocity is, the less filter is on the EQ. You can bring up the lead right here. You can see when I hit a note really quietly, there's very little highs, but if I hit it really hard with a lot of velocity, it opens up and adds a lot of highs into the sound. And if y'all want a sound design tutorial on that, let me know. I'd love to do some sound design tutorials. But you want to find presets like the one in this one, where you can be really dynamic with it and open it up to add a lot more emphasis and a lot more energy in parts where you need it. Because at the end of the sample, I want to have this kind of crescendo where everything's, you know, coming up. I have these really high notes on the pad and I have these high notes on the counter melody. I'm really building this crescendo where everything's getting really loud, really having a lot of energy at this point. And I want to be able to do that with the lead as well. And the way we're doing that is just by adding the velocity. You can hear the difference when I do it really low versus really high. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have sounds that are very dynamic like that, just so that you can have more control over what you're doing. But then after the outro, I have this little 2-bar gap before dropping it in. I'm doing one final little thing. I'm doing a distorted vocal lead. And to do the effects on that, I love putting auto-tune because I cannot sing. So I make sure to do that so I'm actually hitting the notes. Then I'm adding a bunch of distortion. I love the Omnisphere effects, but you can get all these effects in different plugins. It's really just a compressor, an EQ, chorus, and a bit of distortion. Then I'm getting an EQ to cut out all the highs and lows. Then adding a really wide reverb, which, you know, I have it 50% mix almost, so it's really present. Then I have this delay, which, you know, it's really just adding some ear candy. Just adds a little bit more ambience to the sound. But I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Again, Nubank is available. There is a free download, 100 presets, also 100 one-shots if you don't have Omnisphere 3. Appreciate the support. I'll catch y'all on the next one.